So speaking of the TWIM practice, from my current low level of understanding, I would say it's two main parts. The first part is traveling through the jhanas, these natural levels of consciousness, levels of understanding that exist in all of us. My guess would be that they're there all the time. It's just that I don't have the awareness to recognize it. And so the TWIM practice, initially the instructions are to close the eyes, be in a comfortable position. They're very much about comfort, and that is something that I initially kind of reacted against, because I come from the Marine Corps. Pain is weakness leaving the body, and in Goenka Vipassana, there is the teaching of aditan, of sit for the hour without moving, and if pain comes up or whatever, it's just like sit through that. And I kind of, we humans, and I certainly, we can take on these stories of like, just go through it. And we have these societies also that teach us that of, just suck it up and grind, get on your grind. Like these days I'm like, hustle, get on your grind. Why would I want to grind? What am I grinding? My body, my mind, like to make some money? That doesn't seem nice. But all of these sorts of messages were given, and so I get to TWIM, and they're like, get as comfortable as possible. Sit in a chair, doesn't matter. Lying, the majority of my meditation now is laying meditation, like at least in the darkroom and things. 80%, 70% laying. Because be as comfortable as possible. Because yes, there is benefit, there is insight to be gained by being with pain or any sort of sensation, and recognizing ultimately that even this pain is not personal. Like it came about due to some cause in the past. I can't change that. It's here. It's going to go away. It's impermanent. And so I don't need to identify with it. I don't need to create some story about how it's terrible or whatnot. So there is value to that. But what they have found with TWIM is that the deeper personality change comes from being able to go deep into the meditation. And then subsequently, once one goes deep into the meditation and experiences these shifts in consciousness that are permanent, then it's much easier to let go of the things like the identifying with the pain in the first place. So the disconnecting, identifying with pain, that would be like if I were to say a slower way to go. It takes a long time, and many of us who are in a world that's focused primarily around comfort and convenience and one-day Amazon shipping, many of us are just not going to be with pain and discomfort. We're going to say, okay, the Goenka practice was nice, and maybe every year I'll go, or every couple of years I go, but like it's hard for me to really take this on into day to day because I just don't enjoy it that much sometimes. I have much great respect for Goenka-ji, and I appreciate what Goenka-ji shared with me, which is the first real introduction to the Buddha Dhamma, and I greatly appreciate his incredible wisdom and insight to be able to create a model that shares these 10-day retreats for free all around the world. I mean, that's another example I was saying. To go to a Tony Robbins experience, for example, where I have attended several of them, and I have received some level of benefit from them, but they cost hundreds or thousands of dollars. I forget what the one, $4,000 is one that I paid, I believe. And it's in an environment where it's kind of like, well, yeah, money comes when you're giving value to others and like this. And I'm not saying that. I've given tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands to people for a benefit. I'm willing to do that. But there's a very different experience that I felt once I came to Goenka Vipassana, where for 10 days they're feeding me, they're housing me, and they're teaching me a practice with ultimately was much more powerful and much more transformative than what Tony Robbins shared with me, and they're doing it for free. And I can donate if I choose, but it's for free. That is something that just by hearing the words that I'm saying, I don't think it can be understood. It's a very different experience to feel where even in the US, we are so used to just everyone asking for money for everything. And you drive down the road and all there are is billboards asking for money. And you don't even recognize it. I don't even recognize it until I began coming to other countries. And even in Spain or Europe or places, there aren't billboards and signs like there are in the US. They're just everywhere, trying to get attention in order for me to give them money for something. And it's these very transactional relationships, which I believe, okay, that's just what life is. Like I said, it's a trade. It's a give value for value and things like that. And then come to places where it's not like that and realize like, oh, wow, it feels different. I feel like I can breathe. I feel like there's just some little space that opens up in the back of the mind of like, it's not, maybe at first it's like, what are they trying to get out of me? You know, everyone's always trying to get something out of me. So what are they trying to get out of me? But then at some point realize like, oh, they're literally just doing this for free. And not just Goenka, but many others. But yeah, so I have great appreciation for Goenka. I'm certainly not knocking. I'm certainly not saying TWIM is better than Goenka, or do TWIM and don't do Goenka, or do as you feel. I'm only sharing my current personal experience. And so this practice of TWIM being focused on enjoying the practice. Because as I was saying, the Buddha discusses jhanas. I didn't search how many times, thousands, definitely. I have the Majjhima Nikaya, which means the middle length discourses, where he is discussing jhanas. Excuse me, sorry. I'm thinking I will go to the Kindle and see if I can find how many. The middle length discourses those are the discourses that are middle length, and in there are many mentions of jhanas, and yet in many of the meditations that are currently taught, especially in straight vipassana and things, jhana is said like, be careful of jhanas, because jhanas are dangerous. You can get addicted to them and then you won't be able to progress. 375 different, in this book there's 152 suttas in this book of the middle length, and there's 375 mentions of jhana. That means he talked about it a lot. 152 suttas, 375 mentions. We talked about it a lot. And I never heard that. Jhanas are not discussed. I believe they're discussed in the longer courses of Goenka, but the vast majority of Goenka meditators never get to long courses, because you have to do X amount of short courses first. And he doesn't mention jhanas in there. So that was one real, this is different when I'm connecting with TWIM and I'm having in the first retreat, they're talking about jhanas. I thought these are something to kind of be avoided, or these are only for absorption. But then they're teaching me, no, that's not correct, or that's not the only way. I won't say it's correct. And then TWIM is very much focused on enjoyment, like I said, enjoy. And as we read these suttas, it's like all the Buddha is talking about is, this is blissful, this is divine, this is sublime. And he talks about the levels of the jhana. The first jhana, the bliss of renunciation, or the joy of seclusion, or these are the different things that you experience in this jhana. It's all about happiness and joy and peace. And it's like, well, that is also not really being, I wasn't learning that where I was meditating. And I searched the suttas again, 152, and there were over 300 mentions of either joy, happiness, or bliss. So it's a lot. And so this practice, it really began resonating with me. The practice is, the very basic instructions are, get in a comfortable position, and initially, so there's going to be teachers there who are giving the instructions and who you're interacting with on on a daily basis with daily interviews. The instructions being comfortable position and begin just feeling love for oneself, feeling love for myself. Can use some sort of words or something, may I be happy or something to help bring that feeling up, but ultimately feeling maybe some sort of warm physical sensation here and also mental sensation. And then after some time, begin feeling that for called a spiritual friend or someone that we really appreciate. Maybe putting them here in the heart and feeling, may they be happy. Not repeating it over and over like a mantra, but just using it to bring up that feeling and then feeling it for this person. And then at some point with discussion with the teachers, they'll change the instructions and begin radiating that feeling out into the world, all-encompassing, immeasurable. Radiating that feeling out, this feeling. And then when one does that, what Bhante Vimalaramji rediscovered and others is that in this very relaxed mental state, feeling this, then slowly, the mind starts going through these jhanas, these levels of understanding about how the mind works, these levels of subtlety in the mind and existence. And so, and I cannot say them from memory. Actually, I have I'll pull up just so you can hear some. But what one can experience firsthand is that just different things begin, I won't say happening, we just become aware of them in different ways that the body and the mind work together. So this is Majjhima Nikaya 111, Anupada Sutta, one by one as they occurred. And this is the Buddha speaking with the monks about one of his most senior monks named Sariputta. And he's describing what Sariputta experienced when he began meditating over these days. So he says, Sariputta entered upon and abided in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. So immediately he's saying he feels rapture, another word for rapture being joy. He feels great. He's enjoying it, pleasurable. The states in the first jhana, the applied, sustained thought, the rapture, the pleasure, the unification of mind. And then he goes into the second jhana. With the stilling, there's much more, I'm not reading it all. With the stilling of applied and sustained thought, abide in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind, with rapture and pleasure born of concentration. And it goes like this continually. So these are enjoyable states that he is describing. And as he describes, like I just said, the first jhana, there is applied and sustained thought, like as in we just sit down. This is what I learned from my own experience while being in the retreat. So this is just from my experience, and this will adjust as I continue. So this is in no way like the real total understanding, but this is from reading these and from my own personal experience, what I discovered, okay. And it took some time because like he's talking about rapture and joy. And when I first heard that, and when the teachers are saying, yeah, there's joy and there's pleasure and there's happiness, at first I'm like, okay, where's that? You know, like, because for me, I'm from such a hyper stimulation, a lot of it has toned down and I've gained much more sensitivity and awareness now over the years than it was previously. But still, we're in a hyper-stimulation world. Like, things are not subtle out there. If you go down the street, it's only like bright lights and noises and honk, honk. You know, you go watch TV and it's not like subtle things. It's like, yeah, and do these other things. Alcohol is not subtle. It's like, everything is hyper-stimulation. Sex, and they're all like really hyper-stimulation. And so these joy and pleasure and things, these are much more subtle. And it took me some time to really begin to recognize. And I had to let go of my expectations, because I wasn't actually feeling it. I was looking for the story. Like I said, I was looking for the story. Joy feels like this. Joy feels like, I just won $1 million. Yeah, this is awesome. I can't believe it. But joy and all of these things, they have a whole range, and they can be all kinds of different things. So to feel it instead. So I began giving more attention and awareness to what am I actually feeling right now in this experience. And so then I began connecting with it more. So we say the first jhana, I sit in meditation, or I lay in meditation, stand in meditation, and I close the eyes, and I just bring awareness to whatever the object or the vehicle, this feeling of loving kindness, just this awareness. And it's like, okay, I don't have to engage right now. I don't have to intentionally think about a lot of things. The mind might still be thinking, it is, because that's one part of it, the applied and sustained thought, but in the first. But I'm not like sitting down and trying to solve math problems or something. I'm not watching a bunch of things like, okay, I'm relaxed. There's seclusion. I'm secluded from sensory engagement, relaxing. Then the second jhana, with the cessation of applied and sustained thought. So after some time, the mind calms down more and more, because I just keep bringing it back to this feeling of loving kindness, just feeling it there. And so the mind quieting down. And as the mind quiets down, it's really like quite peaceful. And it's like, okay, I don't really have to engage with the mind all that much anymore. Slowly. And so then we enter into the third jhana. And the third one is like even more, just more subtle, more nice, more relaxed. I'm less reactive to things. If I hear some noise or whatever, I can still hear things. I can feel things, I can whatever. I'm not fully absorbed and locked in, but it's just less like reaction to it. The fourth, with the equanimity and mindfulness or awareness. And like, I'm just equanimous. I just, like the mind, this isn't like I'm saying here of, I'm equanimous, like I'm thinking that. It's like, it's a different experience. When you feel it, you'll know it's different. It's like I'm just walking through and things are flowing around me, and cool, I just kind of walking. Doesn't really impact me. It's all good. Yeah. And then there is the fifth jhana, and this is known as the base of infinite space. And it's an interesting name, and so when you first heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this, In my current experience, speaking with teachers, and in my own experience, this is just like, as we stay still, mentally and physically, then the mind stops engaging with the physical body as well, and at some point it just kind of fades away and disappears. It's still there, and if something touches me, if a fly lands on me, or if some water comes out of my eye and rolls down my cheek, I will feel it. But otherwise, I don't really feel it, unless I put my mind's attention onto it. But otherwise, the mind is with this feeling of loving kindness, which is kind of moved up just into mind. It's just kind of existing. And so the body is not really there anymore. And so when the body is not there, the mind subsequently feels very spacious, because normally the body or the mind is really focused on the body, and the body is physically constrained. It's this area here. And as it kind of separates from that, it feels very spacious. And so infinite space. This is my current experience. The next one is jhana's infinite consciousness. And this is, as the mind becomes more and more subtle, then it is able to see how all of these little consciousnesses, all of these little thoughts, all of these little memories, all of these little like contacts from the little sound and everything, these things just pop up, arise and pass away, arise and pass away, arise and pass away. Little proto thoughts, little meta thoughts, like the little beginnings of thoughts, or even full thoughts, or just seeing with more clarity, like these things are just going, anicca. So infinite consciousness. And the next one being the seventh jhana, the base of nothingness. And this is where the mind my mind, the mind has become more subtle. It's kind of even let go of that. It's not really interested in that. It's not that it goes away. It's just that initially, at some point, the feeling of the body, the mind is not focusing on that. And so it feels this spaciousness. And then at some point, it's kind of like, okay, I got it. That's not really new anymore. It's not giving attention to it. And so it goes deeper into the subtlety of, oh, look at these consciousnesses. And then it's like, okay, that's not really new anymore. And so it goes deeper into this just like further disengaging, letting go. And subsequently, this nothingness where there's just not as much activity, can go for minutes at a time without the mind really engaging in anything. There may be little proto thoughts that come up, but they just kind of pass by. The mind's just kind of there. And then the 8th jhana being the base of neither perception or non-perception. And this is another kind of interesting terms. This, for me, in the experience, I won't even really speak about my experience with these last 8th and 9th, because I have had hundreds of hours now in the jhanas and dozens of hours in these later ones, 7th. But the 8th and the 9th, these are very subtle, and so I have experienced things, but I don't feel that I have anything to be able to share appropriately here. So I'll leave that for other teachers. But there's just even further subtlety. And then finally, the 9th jhana that the Buddha teaches, and that is experienced by people in this modern day, is known as Nirodha samapatti, which another term is the cessation of feeling, perception, and consciousness. And this is where, again, I'm not going to speak from my own, I'll just speak from what I have read and heard, and the mind is getting subtler and subtler and subtler, and it's not engaging with things. And at some point, the habit patterns of engaging, they're just kind of winding down, not engaging. And at some point, it just stops, and it just shuts off. And so there's no consciousness, there's no awareness. Whether that is for split seconds, because we have had the habit pattern of just continually engaging, and so even though it gets to that subtlety for a split second, but then there's that old pattern of engaging again, and so some thought or something comes up and brings it back. Or if it's for longer amounts of time, such as I mentioned, one of the teachers named Delson Armstrong. He is one person. There are others, and in the TWIM community there are certainly others, but then there are also monks and things. But Delson has spoken about his own experiences, such as in the Guru Viking podcast that I'll share, of being in this state for 6 days, more than a few times. 6 days where the mind is just fully off. He is not aware, he's not present, and he's not moving. The bodily functions shut down in some way, so he's still alive, but he's not conscious. He intends to enter and to stay for a certain amount of time because he's at that level of ability, and then he intends to come out after a certain amount of time. So last year, Harvard and Boston Medical, they combined to do a study with him about this Nirodha samapatti's cessation experience or non-experience. And I think the year before, Amsterdam University was doing a study as well, because to attain this level of ability means that one has really purified the mind and one has really developed the mind. And that means also generally, if one has purified the mind that much, then what we would consider normal habits of craving and aversion and reaction and things, those need to be purified. It's just cause and effect. or else the mind wouldn't be able to stay in this state of non-existence and non-engagement. It would come back to some sort of craving and aversion. So they were doing some different studies on him, some neuroscience studies and whatnot. Pretty interesting stuff. I won't say much about it. You can listen to the podcast if interested. So that would be discussing the jhanas of TWIM.